Hello, it's Brandon Wissinger again, and I'm going to do a edition on energy. So I'm going to should try to explain what needs to be done in the energy. By energy, I mean electricity sector, and how we can get that done. So first off, we need to meet 100. We need to get 100% renewable or alternative energy, and by alternative, I mean nuclear power. Um, so by 2050. Actually, it should be 80% renewable and alternative energy by 2030, and 100% by 2050. So, and we also need to phase out all coal by 2030. We need to ban all new fossil fuel power plants, like in the next 3 years, and we need to phase out all fossil fuels by 2050. So, um, let me give you some examples, some some things about renewable energy. So the technologies we have are wind, offshore, and onshore. So the advantage of wind being offshore is that winds are stronger over the ocean than they are on land because there's not as much obstructions. Um, so that's a big, but they cost more offshore than onshore. Onshore wind is pretty cheap. Actually, maybe even the cheapest energy source. Natural gas is gives us a good run for its money, but it might be the cheapest energy source we have, onshore wind. So wind wind turbines, they spin, create energy through a generator. Excuse me. They don't or Wind energy, for one thing, they don't spin out of control because they they will lock in place before that happens. They're also, wind energy happens a lot at night, but so unfortunately, seasonally, they both align. Solar and wind have the least in the winter, but so yeah, wind is a really good resource. Also, birds don't get killed very much by wind turbines. They get killed by buildings, cats, cars. You know, so no, wind turbines aren't a big deal. Wind turbines aren't a big deal. So yeah, solar. So there are several different types of solar. There's solar utility scale solar, which involves panels on solar farms. There's home solar, which you put on top of your home. There's community solar, which you have for the community. You have a solar array for that. You have a business where you put solar arrays on top of businesses. You have thermal utility, which is basically where a bunch of mirrors reflect sunlight on the top of a someone's car alarm is going off. At the top of a tower, what has molten salt in it, and use that. It heats up the molten salt, and use that to store energy in that hot molten salt to store energy and heat up water, which turns a turbine, which creates electricity. And that can go on nightfall, daytime. And then there's a solar updraft tower where mirrors point at a tower, and that tower draws air from underneath up, and it turns a turbine. At least that's I think a solar updraft tower works. So there's tidal, which is still a technology that's coming out, where you have a turbine that's turned by the tides, and then there's another one with There's wave where it pushes up and down like a arm thingamajiggy, and it creates energy that way. There's other types too. There's biomass. biomass, basically, you take energy from your junk and you burn it, like wood junk, or leftover farm residue, that sort of thing, and you burn it, and it creates energy, and use that to power. You use that to power whatever. That's another type. There's also using biomass, basically similar to waste recycling, doing the same thing. That's not. I don't consider waste recycling really eco-friendly though, because it still emits carbon dioxide that would not be emitted otherwise. There's ocean thermal energy conversion, which can produce electricity because the difference between cold ocean water and tropical surface waters, and they pump water to produce electricity. So, and this produces a lot of energy too. So, there's hydropower, which could either be dam involved, where a dam is set up. Has a lot of power. Or small hydropower, which doesn't make very much, but it's just a little turbine being turned. There's also geothermal, where water is pumped through volcanoes and that sort of thing. Volcanic activity warms the water and it creates steam, and which pushes the turbine. That's another type, geothermal energy. That's another type. Nuclear fission, which currently have now. Nuclear fission, which produces a lot of energy, a lot more than pretty much. All these work effectively. They all work effectively. They're all the costs are in range to be used. They're all effective. I don't know about actually ocean thermal. I'm not sure. And tidal and wave. I'm not sure about them. They're effective, but everything else, solar, wind, hydropower, they're all effective. Biomass, geothermal energy, they're all effective. Um, uh, so, so there, so we, so, and one thing on nuclear energy, I agree. I don't think we should expand until we have fusion. I don't think we should expand on creating more nuclear power plants, fission power plants. But I do think we should not decommission them. We should make sure they stay online. They are, of our energy pie, over half of it is fossil fuels. So, um, so, um, so energy is the largest sector in the world for greenhouse gas emissions. It is the second largest sector in the U.S. behind transportation. So it's a really big area, and we can decarbonize industry, we can decarbonize transportation, and we can decarbonize housing off of it. So it's a pretty important sector to decarbonize. So, and in both on all three of, because I don't remember all this information, I have to look some of the stuff back up again. So, so I don't think we should decarbonize, or don't think we should take rid of nuclear power. because there's a lot of, for one thing, it's one of the safest energy sources out there, if not the safest. It's just when something bad happens with nuclear power, it really bad happens. But 3 Mile Island always let off as much of radiation as an X-ray. So but when the media gets hold of something with a nuclear disaster, what do we have to compare it to? What do we have to compare it to? Hiroshima and Nagasaki are probably much the biggest things we have to compare it to. So pretty much, nuclear power is nuclear power. Also, the thing is, decommissioning them doesn't get rid of nuclear waste. You think that when you decommission a nuclear power plant, the nuclear waste is going to magically disappear, but it doesn't work that way. There's, now I have to look up what the place is called. We used to store our nuclear waste in we used to store our nuclear waste in our repository in Nevada, or New Mexico. Yucca Mountain. We used to store it in Yucca Mountain, but because of local opposition, we don't do that anymore. The problem is when you store it's in Nevada. So it's Nevada. So we used to store it there, but we don't store it anymore. So guess where we store it? Right where the nuclear power plant once was. Guess what? The nuclear waste is still there. It didn't solve anything. And you might as well, if it's sitting there, you might as well use it for something. If it's going to sit there anyways, you might as well use it for something. You also have more staff on hand when you're doing when you're powering stuff. More ability to respond to something going wrong. So it makes much more sense to keep these up and running. And also, they supply 19% of our power source, bigger than any renewables in the U.S. So getting rid of them would make it a lot harder to decarbonize. So in the U.S., the sectors go like this. 9% is agriculture, 29%, which is the largest, is transportation, 28% is electricity, 22% is industry, and then commercial and residential emissions is 12%. So, also, by the way, Huntington County gets 100% of its, most days, gets 100% of its energy from zero carbon sources. So, for Rural Valley, your electricity is from Raystown Dam. So, that's where electricity for that comes from. It's supplemented by a nuclear power plant. Penelec gets its electricity from a power plant, from a nuclear power plant, but that's being decommissioned, and they're going to start using windmills between Blair and Center County to power that, a new wind farm that they're putting up. So, also, energy consumption is continuing to go up. There's more things to, power. So, yeah. So, coal is not economical anymore. Coal is not economical anymore. It also has a lot of health risks. Coal isn't economical anymore, and this clean coal stuff is just ridiculous. Clean coal doesn't exist, because if you put basically what clean coal is making carbon capture, for the most part. That's the only way they really make it clean, first of all. Put carbon capture, and that's too expensive. That's way too expensive. Coal on its own is too expensive. Not to mind when you put carbon capture on it. So, there really isn't such a thing as clean coal. So, um, so, our energy consumption by source in the U.S. Or wait a minute, wrong thing. Electricity production. 33.8% is natural gas. 30.4% is coal. Nuclear is 19.7%. Hydro is 6.5%. Wind is 5.5%. Biomass is 1.5%, and other, which includes solar, is 2.6%. Now, don't think because of that graph that you can't have 100% renewable energy. There's a lot of countries that do it. Wrong thing. So just don't because of that. Don't think that you can't have 100%. So Costa Rica, 100% renewable energy. Iceland, 100% renewable energy. Uruguay, 100% renewable energy. Norway meets 98% of its energy from that. And people might say, and 90% of Sweden, and Sweden that meets 90%, and a lot of other countries substantial amounts of their electricity production by renewable energy. So, and actually, if you in the EU and the US, by state, by country, the graph, the more renewable energy you have, the less blackouts and brownouts you have, not the other way around. The more dependent it is. But I don't think that's because of renewable energy. I think that's because when you have renewable energy on more renewable energy in the grid, you probably invested more in the grid itself. That's probably why. So we need to get rid of fossil natural gas, and we need to get rid of coal. So there's things called peaking power. Peaking power is like, how do I describe it? Energy that needs to be turned on and turned off again. Most of the electricity we make is not peaking power. But peaking power is variable electricity consumption that cannot be just done by the wind or something like that. So that can be supplied by batteries, grid batteries, and also it can be provided by nuclear power. It can be provided by nuclear power. It can be provided by biomass. It can be provided by it can provided by geothermal. I'll get more into that in a minute. So, so one thing for buying home energy is you can get a power purchase agreement where they put the solar panels on top of your house for free, but you have to pay like a utility company, how you would pay a utility company for it, and they own the panels. That's one way of getting around it, that's one way of putting home energy. I couldn't find a power purchase agreement on here. I'm going to recheck and try to see if I can find one. But at any rate, also biomass. You want to be careful of biomass Because if you use biofuels are not necessarily biomass, but biofuels, you can't put cellulose. You use ethanol, that's from corn mostly, and soybeans, and that takes up resources that could be used for food and that sort of thing. And that could end up emitting more emissions than it actually keeps from being emitted. And the way that biomass and biofuels keep emitted is because the emissions that they take in the carbon dioxide, create sugars from it, and then that gets burned. That creates carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide has been in the carbon cycle, so they're carbon neutral, I think. Yeah, not carbon zero carbon, but carbon neutral. So they're carbon neutral. The thing, and also biogas, which is sustainable methane gas, is also produced through anaerobic digesters, can also be used for the same thing. But we cannot use fossil natural gas. You go up to States College and you see these buses that say clean natural gas. That's bullcrap. There's no such thing as clean natural gas. Natural gas, well, fossil natural gas. If you're using fossil natural gas, if you're drilling for natural gas, it's not sustainable. Why? 3 reasons. A, you're fracking. You're putting off chemicals into the water, chemicals that are poisonous, that are sometimes flammable, and you're putting them in possibly someone's water supply, and now they're drinking poisonous, contaminated water. That's reason 1. Two, when natural gas is burned, it creates carbon dioxide and water. Those two, the carbon dioxide is still being created, and it was from outside the carbon cycle. It was from under the ground. It wasn't in the carbon cycle for hundreds of millions of years. So now it's suddenly in the carbon cycle. You contributed to putting more carbon in the carbon cycle. Therefore, you cause more climate change. So it doesn't cause as much carbon dioxide as, say, coal, but it's still bad. Then the last thing is, it leaks. When you transport it as a gas, and it leaks, it's pure methane. It's almost pure methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas, and it's 36 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So when it's released into the atmosphere, it's going to create more warming, worse than carbon dioxide. So really, natural gas is just as bad as coal. It's not this transition fuel. It's not a bridge. So, okay. Now I'm going to start talking. Okay. So now I'm going to start talking about grid stuff. So on the grid, we have a couple things. We have grid batteries, a DC national grid, and we need to revamp the grid. Well, grid batteries. So there's compressed air, where you compress air, and then when you want it, use it, you light it on probably a small amount of natural gas, and it burns, and it creates something that turns a turbine, and then creates electricity. There's lithium ion, where this is what Elon Musk is doing, where he's or in Australia and a lot of other places. In Australia, he made a bunch of these grid batteries and said, if I'm not able to deliver it on time, this is all free. He did, of course, get it on time. He's Elon Musk. He somehow was able to do that. I don't know, but by working his employees to death. But so he created that. I like the guy, but sometimes I wonder if he's sane. And have a little trouble with his standards of his employees. But at any rate, so lithium-ion batteries. He's creating lithium-ion batteries, but they're expensive. Lithium-ion batteries are very expensive. So then there's also something called a zinc air battery, which is good for grid batteries. It's coming out in technology, and it seems to work really well for grid batteries. And there's molten salt thermal batteries, like I talked about. Basically, that's what that solar thermal is. I'll talk about solar thermal, hot water solar, in the housing section, housing part. So basically, solar thermal, or molten salt batteries. You heat up salt that can keeps warm, and then that later, if you pump water out, it generates steam, turns the turbine. Same thing. Lead batteries, and then you have electric vehicles pumping your electricity for the grid in electric vehicles, and then they would be your battery for you. There's flywheels. We use a flywheel. Use hydro, where you pump water up a hill. You pump water up a hill using electricity, and then the water sits there in a lake, and then when you need the electricity, you let the water go, and it comes down the hill and turns a turbine, and the grid generates electricity. And then there's superconducting magnetic energy. And these are different types of grid batteries, which store large amounts of electricity for the grid. That way you can use it, say, at night or during the winter when you need it. You can use them when you need it. So, and then there's a couple other things to help deal with this. A DC national grid. A DC national grid. Basically what we need one thing we should do to deal with climate change is create a national direct current grid. A grid that's underground, it's direct current, and it spans the entire United States. And it's attached, and it's separate, but it's attached to our other grids in the U.S. The other grids where we get our electricity off of. It's attached to. It's a grid at it will be higher than the other levels of the current grids that we have. It will be the highest level, where like the wall socket is the lowest level. It will be the highest level. The purpose of it will be to take electricity, let's say the Midwest, where you have a lot of wind, and deliver it to like New York City, or take a lot of energy from, say, Arizona, where we have a lot of solar power, to say California, say New York City, something like that. So basically, it's it's traveling long distances, so it needs to be direct current, because direct current doesn't lose electricity over time. It doesn't, and so that's why it's direct current. So yeah, it'd be a super grid, and it would allow us to use renewable energy. And since different areas of the United States get get energy at different times of the day, it would work. This would help us a lot. And then also we need to revamp the grids. We need to get our grids up and running so they're more efficient. We need to get our grids in order. So we need to get our grid to work. We need to have a more efficient grid so there's less electricity being used. So how do we do that? Well, we need to have investment, and like a stimulus or a climate bank or something like that, an infrastructure bank. We need to start with investment in renewable energy projects. We need to put money into that. We need to give grants, loans, that sort of thing out for that. We need to expand the renewable energy tax credits. We need to expand the renewable energy production tax credit, expansion and extension, homeowner renewable energy tax credit, expansion and extension. We need to have renewable energy manufacturing tax credits, put them in, so people do manufacturing, they promote the manufacturer for renewable energy. And then energy industry education grants, loans, scholarships. That's another thing we need to do. We need to have renewable energy project loans and grants, which I just said. And we need to have renewable energy project loans and grants that are for the utilities, for utilities, for consumers, and for homeowners and for businesses. So we need to also do that. Majority should be probably for utilities because the biggest projects are going to be utility scale. A big amount of it is going to be utility. But we still need a good amount for homeowners and that. And then we need energy storage research grants to research more on energy storage. To get that motor up and running, we need to have loans and grants for energy storage. We need to do for energy storage what we did in 2009 for solar. And then we need to have a national grid project, DC grid project, putting that in. We need to give grants and loans to revamp the grid, fund energy efficiency projects, and tax credits for nuclear power plants to provide them with something to keep them running and economically viable. So, if you're wondering why these sound like a lot of bailouts, sometimes we need money to provide for project and promote these and help this get there. We need to promote more infrastructure, and this is basically infrastructure. So that's what we're doing: provide more jobs and sort of thing, and also get us to net zero emissions quickly. We need to have a renewable energy mandate. Regulations why we need to have a renewable energy mandate: 100% renewable energy by 2050 and 80% renewable energy by 2030. But there's a lot of states with renewable energy mandates, but the most strict one is California with 100% by 2045 and 50% by 2050. Well, actually, counting out not with California, but counting alternative renewables. That's what we need to get to. We need to get to. Well, really, we need to have 80% renewable energy by 2030, 100% by 2020 or by 2050. We need to have competition, allow more competition in this, and allow power purchase agreements, people to purchase solar or wind energy and that sort of thing. We need to phase out coal by 2030. We need to provide for those people whose jobs lost to coal or from phasing that out. We need to provide a just transition. I'll do another edition on that. We need to ban fossil fuel power plants, like, within the next 5 years. We need to put stricter standards on power plants to make it harder for them to pollute. And we need to put energy efficiency standards in the grid. We need to retire early coal power plants and natural gas power plants. And benefits of renewable energy: provides more jobs. Renewable energy provides 50% more jobs than fossil fuel energy. The only question is where those jobs are being provided. I wouldn't, that's the main concern. There's no difference in reliability as long as you keep up with energy storage and that sort of thing. Natural gas, well, I just told you why not. And there's no detrimental health side effects. Tens of thousands of people die in the U.S. every year because of air pollution. That would stop that from happening. Well, it wouldn't stop it, but energy is a big cause of it, and people wouldn't be dying because of that. So costs. Let me see if I covered that. Oh, peaking power can be brought by batteries, sort of thing. Cost of energy sources. So probably the lowest cost. The lowest cost with $45 is thin film utility scale solar. So that's thin film, just what it says, thin film utility scale solar. Well, this crystalline utility solar is the next highest, up to $49.55. And then the next one up is wind onshore with $57.5. And then the next one up from that is natural gas hydropower. Or the next one up is hydropower or natural gas. Natural gas goes for is $42 to $210. Median range I'm thinking from this is 200 or $73.5. So that would be above hydropower, but different sources say different things. So hydropower is $59. Biomass is $86. Geothermal is $97. Coal is 8th on the list with $101. Community solar is 9th on the list with $113. Rooftop solar or rooftop commercial industry solar is $139.5. Solar thermal utility scale thermal solar is $139.50. Wind offshore is $142.50. Nuclear fission is $147.50. Oil is $197 or $229, and rooftop residential solar is $253. So the lowest thing and the highest thing are both solar. So the lowest thing is thin film utility scale solar, and the highest thing is rooftop residential solar. And wind is just as good as natural gas. So there you go. So we can do this, and we can move towards doing it. So let's get to work. See ya. Bye.